What's the dumbest reason you go kicked out of class? A kid in front of me turned around and stole my pencil in 9th grade English class and I was telling him to give it back. My teacher only saw me talking and sent me to IISS, in school suspension. It was the last class of the day so I just went home. This story is much better if ISS stands for International Space Station. This girl next to me in 7th grade English started having an allergic reaction, or something, and was choking. So I interrupted the teacher, got kicked out and ran to the principal's office. The teacher got a new butthole torn later that day by the superintendent. Everyone could hear it. I had something similar. I was walking back to class in year 5. I believe a friend of mine was outside coughing up blood. I storm into the class, interrupt the teacher, in attempt to tell her what was going on. I get sent to the deputy principal. Really cool guy. He then called an ambulance and gave me a Snickers. I am unsure if anything happened to the teacher. Somebody farted really loudly and the entire class thought it was hilarious. The class settled down, and 5 minutes later once everybody was totally calm, I remembered the fart and burst out laughing. Kicked out for the first and only time. I do this so much in class. I keep remembering the funny thing and I'm the only one still trying to hold in the laughter after 10 minutes. I had just come back to school after getting my tonsils out. I think I was a sophomore in high school. I literally couldn't talk. I communicated mostly with gestures and written notes. I had a substitute teacher in my college speech class, and she was easily upset. The group of kids that I was sitting with was being super loud, so she kicked the group out for disrupting the class. I was also told to leave despite being physically unable to speak. What? Not me but a friend, walked into our chemistry lesson, sniffs, says smells dank and gets sent out by our very angry teacher. Record of the year as he was sent out in 10 seconds. I got kicked out of English before the first bell rang. Went to private all-boys school, and of course we had a dress code. I got told by my theology teacher that I needed a haircut by the next day. When I told him I couldn't make it to get my haircut that night because of baseball practice and then jazz band rehearsal right after, he told me to go to the office to get a detention and then sit in the library until the end of the period. Well, there's your problem. You're in a theology class. One day, in middle school, I coughed during the national anthem on 9/11, not the actual day, but an anniversary of it, and my teacher went ballistic, sent me to the hall. I apologized for being sick and got sent on my way. What number? Please be fake. For attacking and hitting another student. He was coughing. I was patting his back. We were in the 1st grade. I remember my 6-year self thinking something along the lines of frick. Let him choke then, in 6-year appropriate language, of course. A student in my class got sent to the principal for burping loudly in class when he picked up a pencil and hit his head on the way up, at the table, followed by an agonized scream. It was the funniest day. Misunderstandings can be a B. I had one class where your classmates could vote to send you out. People would randomly stand up and say, I vote we kick so and so out. If enough people agreed, they would have to leave. Professor asked the class to turn in the assignment she never told us about. After a 10-minute lecture about how we are in the wrong, she told everyone to get out and cancelled class for that week. I would call that a win. I had an X-Acto knife which was registered for my design class. I needed it to cut some supplies. When I wasn't in the class it was secured and attached inside my binder. I had it all semester and one day my teacher decided it was unsafe and got me suspended for the day. It's so weird that you'd need to register an X-Acto knife. Just keep it put away when you aren't using it. Teacher was describing Marxist ideology. He said all classes should be eliminated. I said you're right, let's get out of here. He sent me outside for 15 minutes. He did what you asked. We had a test on Edgar Allan Poe sophomore year. Teacher told us the night before we could have 1% extra credit for every fact we wrote about him on the back of the test. I memorized and wrote 102 facts, and left the front blank except for my name. Teacher was not amused. She took me to the principal's office. Principal laughed, said you need to put a maximum on how much extra credit people can earn next time and told her she had to give me my 102%. Honestly, if you memorize 102 facts about him, you deserve that grade. A teacher said my pants were too tight and kicked me out of class until I bought pants that actually fit. Context: I am male. He was also male. More useless context: he had narcolepsy. Even more useless context: he was teaching 8th grade science and once challenged an 8th grader to a game of one-on-one basketball that we all had to go outside for and watch. Happened in our school too. There was like a genocide on skinny jeans and shoes with tiny bits of any color but black on. And I'm talking about like the small Vans tag here. Quite ridiculous really. Anyone who didn't comply with the policy got sent to isolation until they changed. Bastards putting petty things before out education. In HS, the girl behind me tried to get my attention by poking me in the ribs. I'm extremely ticklish. Once she realized this, she would tickle me randomly. One day the teacher was explaining something, and she started tickling me. I got kicked out for being distracting. I went back after class to talk to the teacher about it, and she tells me, "You're distracting to her, and that distraction is distracting other students. It's obvious that she likes you. Just ask her out already so she stops touching you in my class." Did you ask her out after :0? I had a geometry teacher who was older than dirt. I kept asking her to clarify something, but she kept going on with her lesson. I asked about 5 times, and she finally kicked me out, saying I was being disruptive. When the guidance counselor asked me what happened, she allowed me to transfer to another class. Smiling. My teacher wrote me up because I always have this look by my face as if I'm too happy. I was 16 in high school and just found out my tumor wasn't cancerous. Literally nothing could make me mad. Yeah, I'm gonna smile. My dad yelled at her in a parent-teacher conference. It was great. Holy crap man. That is legit the dumbest reason I've read in the thread. I'm glad you're healthy though. Talking before class and being part of my group talking about an off topic. He kicked me out personally, asked me if I had a mental disability. This was an upper level college course. A friend tried pulling my chair out from under me when I was leaning back. I told him to stop. The teacher was talking so I got kicked out and got detention. Friend got nothing. My friend was texting me telling me she was going to kill herself, so I excused myself to the bathroom to call her. She wouldn't answer, so I started freaking out. I guess I was gone a while and the hall monitor told my teacher I'd been just wandering around, so when I made my way back she was pee and just started yelling at me saying she was gonna have me an ISS for just leaving. But then I started sobbing and hyperventilating. Her face was pretty priceless as I stood in the hallway having a total breakdown. I extended my trombone into some douchebag's nose because he was trying to take my music stand. I happened to have one of the only ones that weren't old and wobbly that day. It was satisfying as heck, but God, does this story sound lame. For being too eager to answer the teacher's questions, I kept putting my hand up and she kept choosing other students. This went on for a while and I eventually let out a sigh of exasperation. She proceeded to call me Mr. Sulky and told me to go and stand outside. Everyone laughed at me. Was very embarrassing. Or, I'm sorry that happened. It always seems like teachers never pick the people who actually want to be called on. In 9th grade I threw a skittle in art class and accidentally hit the substitute who was teaching that day. She left the classroom and started crying. The vice principal took me and my friend out of class and made us sit in his office for the rest of that class. I thought the whole thing was so stupid and the teacher was overreacting. Looking back on it, I completely understand what it's like to have an emotional last straw situation that makes you break down and cry. I was a dong. Kids can be dongs. We all hated this teacher. She was fired after the school year. One day everyone was goofing off because we didn't respect her enough to do what she said. So she got really angry and told us to get to work, saying the next person who talks will be sent to the principal's office. So it was quiet for like 5 minutes. Then there was rustling, so someone shushed the rustler. Then someone else shushed the shusher. Next thing you know, the entire room is quietly shushing each other and the teacher is sitting at the front, glaring. I then said, loudly, "Shut up your mouth." This was a joke on an episode of The Simpsons that had aired recently, so it got quite a laugh. Principal had a pretty good laugh when I told her what happened. Upvote for old Simpsons reference. I went to an alternative high school for a couple years. If you don't know what this is, it's where the stupid and behavior challenge kids go. We were playing this math football game. I know, right? Class split into 2 teams and fit every answer right your side would move 10 yards. Myself and a guy on the other team were constantly answering correct, giving the game a complete stalemate. Teacher decides we both are out on injury and makes us sit in the hall. How dare you answer math questions correctly? After 2 of my friends were just removed from the classroom, my professor asked if there was anyone else that wanted to leave. Since no one was answering him, I responded with a simple no sir and was promptly told to get the frick out. In the aftermath of my father's passing, he passed the day after I turned 12. A teacher sent me to the principal's office because not only did the teacher believe I was lying about my dad's passing, but also because I was a misfit who was a target for bullies. What I mean is that I was bullied a lot in grade school and middle school. The bullying got worse after my dad's passing, and some bullies, including the teacher, saw his passing as a just reason to make my middle school experience worse. My best friend's older brother committed suicide when we were 14. He chose to come to school the day after it happened. Of course he was really out of it and someone asked what was wrong. Me and 2 others were the only ones that knew. After he told the kid, his exact response was "frick you. That is complete bulls, people are dongs." Sneezing too hard. I had a really bad bout of allergies one spring. I was in my chemistry class and I kept sneezing. I was trying to keep it down and no one around me seemed to bothered. Then I sneezed so hard I smashed my face into my lab table and gave myself a bloody nose. My teacher turned around and looked at me with my blouse all covering blood and said, "Oh, for frick's sake, get out." I went to the nurse but she wasn't there, so I ended up sitting outside the classroom for the rest of the period trying to listen to my lesson. That doesn't sound like getting kicked out as much as seriously. Go take care of your crap. I complained that the teacher was smoking in class. In all fairness, she did try to stop smoking while giving lectures, but since she was addicted, that did not last very long. I had bronchitis, which made me somewhat allergic to cigarette smoke. I told her that she's either stop smoking or I'd leave the class. Her response was that I was free to leave, but I'd be marked as absent. I left anyways, and still ended up getting the highest grade in class. A bit more context. This was 15 years ago in a developing country where some rules and regulations with regards to public health were missing. Things have since changed, and smoking is now illegal in public buildings. A girl in my class came in late to class. It was oddly quiet, so everyone kind of looked over at her. Teacher asked where she was and she's sorry. I was in the bathroom. It was Taco Tuesday burrito day for lunch. I reply with burrito day hitting you hard, Pearl? Worth? I fell asleep during a movie in class when there was no homework attached to it. The material wasn't going to be on the test. The film wasn't even entirely related to what we were studying. I eventually started a war with this teacher that landed me in a conference room by myself every time I had that period. We weren't allowed to see each other, so an office assistant would get my homework every day. I'd do it, then she'd deliver it back. I made a lot of progress in Pokemon Blue that 2 weeks before schedule changes. People get tired and lights out make it worse. I was exhausted one time during a presentation at work and was sitting front row and resorted to burning myself on the projector just to stay awake. When the lights go out, your tired brain wants sleep. It's not your fault. Having done my homework, the math teacher thought it was so difficult that nobody could do it. There was a really easy workaround and he didn't like me using the workaround. My high school lost my form saying I was up to date on all of my shots, tetanus shot, etc. So I got pulled out of class during a math test and suspended me indefinitely until I get my shots. I had to leave school properties because they lost my freaking form, and I missed out on a test because of it. So I went to my doctor's, got a note saying I'm up to date, brought it back to the school, and took the rest of the day off. I love your username. It was the last day of school in 10th grade and my school made you go to detention if you're late. I arrived at class literally 15 seconds after the bell rung. Teacher was a complete butt. Told me to go get a tardy pass from the front office. Was not about to spend the last day at lunch sitting around in detention. So I never went to the office nor class and spent the next hour or so dodging security guards and roaming my high school. Same teacher gave me dirty looks the next year as my new class was freaking right next to his. Teacher must have been retarded. Cause I got kicked in the nads. I was blinded with my sweater hood tied shut. She was sent to her seat. I was sent to detention. I was once accused in primary school of kicking kids in the nads just because the actual kid who was doing used my name. Never found out who the little crap was. Not me, but my econ teacher kicked out a student that was not enrolled in the course. The student was foreign, spoke very broken English, and was only in the classroom because he was scared to go outside because of the tornadoes. That's really sad. Oh so many. For pointing out that the study sheets I'd got were missing every page except the last 2 pages. Apparently that's being a show-off smartass. For helping out a classmate who was having trouble breathing. For switching on the ceiling fan in the sweltering 45-degree heat. Taking too long to change into gym clothes, the girls' changing room was locked. For complaining that the kid sitting behind me was poking me with a crafting knife. Sweltering 45-degree heat. I was confused at first. That's a little chilly in Fahrenheit. Can't think of anything that happened to me. I was a good egg. But one day freshman year, we were reading Night by Elie Wiesel in my English class. Before we read it, we learned a little about the Holocaust for background info. Our teacher pulled up a slide that had a picture of the front gates of Auschwitz and the teacher asked the class, "Does anyone have any idea what the words on the gate mean?" And all of a sudden I heard a kid in the back of the class say penis quietly. The teacher heard him and gave him a death stare and just said leave. Our teacher just stopped the lesson and sat quietly at her desk for the rest of the period. Moral of the story, don't ever make fun of the Holocaust because you can really ruin someone's day. Turned in a paper a day after due date with permission. I told him I forgot it at home the day before, to which he said that's fine, don't worry about it. Apparently that meant go home and bring it back after school. So he failed me on the class. I got up and left. A classmate in high school once got kicked out of physics class because she had the hiccups. Our grumpy teacher told her to stop and she said, "I have the hiccups. I can't control it." Some silence and then she hiccuped again and got sent to the principal's office. We were all in awe. My dad can control his hiccups. He'll hiccup once or twice, then say something along the lines of, "Okay, that's enough," and just stop. I don't understand how he does it, and I'm very, very jealous. Snorting pixie dust off of a girl's boob for a Snapchat. In hindsight I deserved to be kicked out and kicked in the balls, but at the time I couldn't believe he was kicking me out. 3rd graders crazy these days. I stayed awake. I used to fall asleep every day and one day I did not. He accused me of being on drugs and kicked me out. He was right and I got to get out of class early. It was my second to last day of senior year in high school and for whatever reason I had a bubble wand. I blew one solitary bubble that slowly drifted to the front of the room towards my disgruntled math teacher and she kicked me out. This sounds like a SpongeBob episode. I couldn't stop laughing during sex ed. We watched a video explaining how the sperm make it to the egg. At one point they showed how sperm will sometimes mistake other things for the egg and try to fertilize it instead. The entire thing was set to the Mission Impossible theme. Back when I did health bio, I always got annoyed by the people who found sex ed funny, but that sounds freaking hilarious. Kicked out of swimming class as a 6-year-old for using the correct technique. The teacher didn't want us putting our heads under the water while doing breaststroke. I got in a lot of trouble. When I was in 2nd grade I was sent to the office for dropping my pencil too many times to avoid doing my math work. I also took too long coming back from the bathroom. I got in trouble all the time in school for reading under my desk. In 8th grade, my math teacher told me to put the book away, and I was like, I can't stop reading. Someone is dying. She let me finish the chapter. The reading thing is all too real for me, but I wasn't so creative about it. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.